Round two is upon us. It's divisional round weekend, but before we get into the usual predictions, previews, and whatnot, I think this podcast would be best served to recap Wild Card Weekend. Now, we went into that weekend with a pretty predictable card. Not many surprises with the outcome, in my opinion. The only thing closest to a surprise was with Kansas City and Tennessee, and I'll go over that in a minute. But overall, I give Wild Card Weekend a 50% success rate. Lots of new faces, up-and-comers. Jags and Bills was a snooze fest. Falcons took care of business against the Los Angeles Rams like I predicted. Saints versus Carolina was interesting, I will say, but there are no back-and-forth leads or anything of that nature. Saints figured out early they couldn't rely on the rushing attack, adjusted to Breeze carrying the load like old time's sake, and they took care of business. Kansas City versus Tennessee was definitely entertaining as a whole, but again, two extremely underwhelming franchises masking their deficiencies by playing each other on the big stage. Just happens, though. Now we're going to go into a little segment I'd like to call, Where Do They Go From Here? Where I take a quick look at where these playoff losers are headed this offseason. What might happen, what they need to address, the whole gamut. First off, I'm going to address the Bills. The Bills. What the Bills need to do this offseason is not get their hopes up. Now, I'm sure the coaching staff is going to look back and tell players, this is a step in the right direction. We finally got over the hump, guys, etc., etc., etc. But you got to be real with yourselves. You're still the Bills. You finally ended your playoff drought after how many some odd years, but the reality is that this was the weakest the AFC's probably ever been, and you're just a bad team that just so happened to stumble into the playoffs. You're bad at pretty much everything you do except run the football. People say I focus on stats too much like it's a problem, but it really isn't. Stats give us a general idea of how you stack up against your peers. And maybe they don't tell the entire story when you compare individual numbers, but when you look at the entirety of your entire team and say, hey, we ran in the bottom half in pretty much everything, what does that tell you? What would that tell you as an organization owner? You're a bottom of a half team. Where do the Bills go from here? Continue to try and improve and figure out your quarterback situation. Realize what you have with Tyrod, and if you can't get a Kirk Cousins or one of the top quarterbacks in the draft, then just accept he's your best option. Build around him. But most importantly for the Bills, realize you're still the Bills. Moving on to Kansas City. I've always thought this was a good team, good organization. Last year I thought they were primed and ready to go to the Super Bowl because of how talented they were. They got Travis Kelce, they got Tyreek Hill, they found Kareem Hunt, you got Marcus Peters, Barry, players along your front seven. But this team is stuck. It's hit a plateau. They're neither regressing nor improving. And what does that tell you? New direction is needed. Now, whether that new direction is at head coach or quarterback, I'm not sure at the moment. I respect Andy Reid and Alex Smith, so it's not like I want them gone. But this team is going nowhere. You got the young guy Patrick Mahomes who you let develop this year, so this offseason you're going to have to diagnose very quickly if he's ready to step in and provide a spark. And here's where that becomes tricky. Players love Alex Smith. The locker room is for Alex Smith. He had a great year. He had his best year. But as a player, I don't think you want to stay complacent with never making it past the divisional round. So that sort of plays in Mahomes' favor. But if he comes in and mightily struggles, players are going to lose confidence in Andy Reid and ownership, which could cause an implosion. Where do the Chiefs go from here? Definitely figure out what you want to do with your quarterback and or head coach. Maybe draft a number one receiver that can make lives a little bit easier. Los Angeles Rams. The story of the year. I can't say they need new direction because they got that this year with Sean McVay, who should be coach of the year. The Rams are great, man. I have nothing too profound to say except reinforce. Reinforce, reinforce, reinforce. Try your best to retain Sammy Watkins in free agency, but also put some more resources into that defense. The Rams defense has actually been kind of overrated the past couple years, so they need some tightening up to do on that side of the ball. They have Aaron Donald, but no one else who comes close to playing up to that standard on that side of the ball. The Rams specifically need help defending the run, considering they finished 28th in the league this year in doing just that. Not much to see here for the Rams. Strive for continuity on offense. Throw some resources into what is quite frankly an average defense. And now we venture on over to Carolina. Simple. Fix Cam. Find what truly works for him. He's consistently inconsistent. Y'all were talking all this noise about how you're going to run this Patriot-like offense to preserve him so we could run less. And what happens? He finishes with a career high in rushing attempts and rushing yards. He's still around a 20 touchdown, double-digit interception, under 60% completion percentage guy like he's been in previous years. Figure him out. I've been saying since the Super Bowl against the Broncos, keep him in the pocket, and typically he struggles. He has a cannon for an arm, though his technique is undefined, which is why you also got rid of your quarterback coach, because he ain't teaching him nothing. Put him in an offense that's not about short passes and efficiency. Put him in an offense that's all about play action deep shots. Let him air it out. And that's why there should be some positivity in Carolina for now, because that is exactly what new offensive coordinator Norv Turner is all about. You commit to this guy who may be unpolished, cool. Well, you got yourself into this situation, so tailor this offense to what he does best as just a pure passer, and that's let him attack downfield. This is the most critical offseason of Cam Newton's career. We're at a crossroads wondering if he's ever going to develop as a passer. And he's going to be reaching age 30 in 2019 when the Panthers have a potential out of his contract. This is an important season for the Cam Newton Carolina experiment. And if things don't improve, I can see things getting real ugly over on that franchise. All right. I think I covered all the losers from last weekend. Up next is my prediction / preview of Divisional Round Weekend. I'm Milton Woolley. You're now listening to The Pylon. Now, here's where these playoffs get really interesting, where I get really conflicted, particularly on the NFC side of the ball. This weekend, it's classic offense versus defense. The Falcons and Saints are led by their offenses, while the Vikings and now the Eagles are led by their defenses. Let's start with the Falcons and the Eagles. Matt Ryan and the Falcons have struggled on offense compared to years past, but they're still top 10 in scoring. The Eagles have a top offense, yes, but that was mostly on the strength of Carson Wentz, who was having an MVP year. But obviously that changes now that Nick Foles is in the lineup. I think this will be a relatively low-scoring game, and I wasn't really looking ahead last week when I said the Falcons weren't going to go very far last week. But they're getting a stroke of luck in the playoffs for the second year in a row. Last year, they ran through an injury-ravaged NFC. Then last week, they went against a young, inexperienced team that showed you that youth and inexperience. And now they're going against a team without what would have been the league MVP. The last two MVPs, Matt Ryan, Cam Newton, both went to the Super Bowl. Now the Eagles are without that dynamic. I'm once again taking the Falcons to survive this one just based off of another stroke of luck in favorable circumstances. Not because I think they're a good team. They're going against a better team without its MVP favorite, and his replacement is a middle-of-a-pack guy. Falcons have better playmakers in place on their offense, more continuity, and I believe their defense will hold on long enough for the offense to crank it out. Falcons to the NFC Championship game. As for who is going to meet them there, every playoff weekend I'm pretty sure of who I'm going to pick, save one matchup. Last week it was the Falcons versus the Rams, and now this week it's the Saints versus the Vikings. And actually, I know I started out this segment saying this weekend in the NFC is classic offense versus defense, but I was wrong on that. Who would have thought the Vikings would have a top 10 scoring offense in the league? This team is actually a juggernaut who's relatively flown under the radar because, let's be honest, no one cares about the state of Minnesota. There's no star. There's no nationally recognized player on that roster. Over on the Saints side, you have Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, Marshawn Lattimore, Cam Jordan, all the sexy names. Last week, both Kamara and Ingram struggled to get anything going against Carolina. And this week isn't going to be any different going against the best defense in the league. So now the question is, can Drew Brees overcome the second-ranked pass defense in the NFL? Can the Saints, who own a top 10 pass rush, get through an offensive line that's given up the 8th least amount of sacks in the NFL? It's where strengths and philosophies clash, so when I don't know who to pick, I go with my gut feeling. And I'm going to say the Minnesota Vikings will pull this one out. The Saints are 4-5 on the road this year, while the Vikings have only lost once all year at home. Vikings. Over on the AFC side, my most anticipated matchup of the weekend overall is the Jaguars versus the Steelers. Both are highly emotional franchises at this current juncture, and I expect a lot of chippiness, a lot of trash talk, and a lot of drama from both sides. But that offense over on Jacksonville is just straight up anemic. They didn't run the ball against the Bills last week, and I don't see it getting any better against Pittsburgh. You shut down Leonard Fournette, and who else you got? Seriously, didn't Blake Bortles have like more rushing yards and passing yards or something like that last week? This Jacksonville defense is all in, but Ben ain't throwing 5 picks against them again. As a matter of fact, I doubt he throws one. This Pittsburgh team is way different than they were the last time they played Jacksonville. They're all in for each other now in light of the Ryan Shazier freakish injury, and they're playing like a team. Juju Smith-Schuster has arrived. You stop Bell. You got Antonio. Can't stop Antonio. Or you stop Antonio, you got Juju. You stop Juju, you got Bryant. Like, really, the Jags or Leonard Fournette are bust. It took a meltdown from Big Ben for the Jaguars to win earlier on this season, and you think that's going to happen again in the postseason with one of the clutchest quarterbacks of all time? Please. I see an emotional game with Pittsburgh winning by 2 touchdowns. 24-10. I hope my math was right on that. That is 2 touchdowns, right? Anyway. Now for Tennessee versus New England. Patriots got it. Nothing to see here. I'm Milton Woolley. You have now listened to another edition of The Pylon. Enjoy this playoff weekend.